Hi, kamusta naman? Nawa we are still able to find things that could bring us joy amidst all the responsibilities and tasks we have to fulfill. Anyway, we are Blessy Jane A. Lampa and Marie Nicolette A. Lampa, your reporters for reading number 2, which is about Plato's The Ring of Gyges.
But before anything else, we have a question just to break the ice. If you are in the universe of Harry Potter and if you have the invisibility cloak, what will you do and why will you do it? Regardless if it is moral or ethical. Sige, ako muna sasagot. Kung ako siguro, since mahilig ako sa mga K-pop groups, ganun, and as we all know, ang mahal ng concert ticket, ako siguro mag-a-attend ako ng concert ng mga favorite K-pop groups ko. Kasi bukod sa mahal yung ticket, syempre hindi ko rin afford minsan kasi student din ako, di naman ako kumikita. Tapos, sobrang hirap pa kumuha ng ticket kasi unahan talaga kasi ang dami yung may gusto tapos limited lang lalo na dun sa mga sa VIP ganon. So kung meron ng invisibility cloak, hindi na ako pipila tapos hindi pa ako magbabayad. Ikaw naman, Blessy, anong gagawin mo if you have the invisibility cloak?
Ayun, actually gusto ko rin yung gusto mo, Col, kasi nga hindi pa ako talaga nakakapanood ng kahit kaninong concert, ganyan. Tapos, super fan ako ng EXO. So, ang mahal-mahal ng ticket. Tapos, unahan, tapos agad nauubos. Anyway, siguro iba naman. Ayun, kasi foodie ako, mahilig ako sa food, mahilig ako kumain. I would like to try yung mga expensive food, ganyan, na nakikita ko sa internet kasi nakakagutom. Tapos, feeling ko sobrang sarap nila kasi sobrang mamahal. So, if I have the invisibility cloak, hindi na ako mamroblema, ganyan, hindi naman nila ako makita, so hindi nila ako masisingil. So yun, Tol.
Tulad nung mga gusto namin gawin ni Bless, if meron kami invisibility cloak, some might say that they would go to places, some might say that they would use it to help others, and some might say or even think of doing things that are usually frowned upon or even outrightly punished. In our reading, we will know more about these things. So yung reading natin ay isinulat ni Plato. He is the founder of the Academy, as we all know, and the Academy is a school that focuses on building knowledge through scientific and mathematical investigations. He was influenced by the death of his mentor, Socrates, who was sentenced to death due to the accusation of corrupting the mind of the youth. He also has a brother named Glaucon, the main speaker of our reading for today.
Ayan. As for the Ring of Gyges, this actually talks about one of the key ethical perspectives during Plato's time, which is what Antiphon taught. This is egoism. So according to the reading and in our past lessons, we all know that egoism tells us about how humans act in accordance to their desires and self-interests. And in this reading, Gyges is the character that Glaucon set as an example. Siya yung lalaki, siya yung character na kinuwento ni Glaucon, ganyan. So, Gyges was once a shepherd, tapos, bigla siya naging ancestor ng last Gygan king. So, in the next part of our discussion, we will know how Gyges became the ancestor to the last Gygan king.
So, to give you a brief summary ng story for those who haven't read it yet, pero I suggest na basahin nyo rin kasi maganda rin talaga yung story. So, Gyges was a shepherd who worked under King Lydia. Isa lang siyang ordinary na citizen doon na sumusunod sa mga laws ng mga rulers nila. One time, while feeding his flock, an earthquake together with a storm took place which caused the opening of the body of the earth. Due to that event, a lot of people died. Gyges saw a dead person with nothing but a ring with them. He took the ring of the dead person and upon wearing it, he acquired the power of invisibility. With that power, he took advantage of it by seducing the queen, killing the king, and taking over the kingdom. This power of invisibility gave him the protection from being punished from all his injustices act.
Ayan, so we know na injustice is doing evil things. Di ba nga, it was mentioned by Nicolette, itong term na injustice as well as the justice. So, according to our reading, injustice is claimed to be better than good because no human is inherently just or good. But like what we have talked last synchronous class. Moreover, in the latter part of our reading, Logan stated that the extreme form or the complete injustice is being deemed just despite not being truly one.
Justice, on the other hand, is described as a good both for its own consequences and for its own sake. It is said to be the lesser evil. This concept originated from the laws that are made to protect people from injustices. Given this, people avoid doing injustices even if they have the thought of doing so, because they do not want to be victims of injustice either. In the reading, it was mentioned that the extreme form of justice is when people gain a bad reputation despite acting justly.
Ayan. So given that we have already shared the essence of the story and then we have shared what injustice and justice is defined as in our reading, then we will share naman yung various arguments or questions raised in the reading.
So yung pinakaunang argument na na-raise ay, do justice and morality exist? In the reading, Gyges used to be an ordinary shepherd who follows the rules, as what I have mentioned kanina. However, upon obtaining the power of invisibility, he changed and did unjust things, knowing that he could get away easily. Just like Gyges, humans tend to act justly just because they are obliged to do so. They are obliged to do good because of the laws. These laws impose fear, the fear to be punished, to be judged, and to get a bad reputation. Without these laws, people will act only according to their own desire, without thinking of the consequences of their action.
As for the second one, the raised question was this: if people will also have their own race of egos, will the just continue doing just things, or will they have the courage to do unjust things because of the protection of anonymity? So according to Glaucon, if just people will also be given the ring of Gyges, the ring of invisibility, they too would do injustices as they would have the protection of anonymity. A person who will not use the power of the ring or the liberty from punishment in doing injustice will be seen by those around him as a fool. Sabi nga niya dun sa reading na yung daw mga tao na merong ring of Gyges tapos hindi nila tinake advantage yung ring or yung power ng ring, ay maaaring palakpakan ng mga tao na kapaligid sa kanya kapag nakaharap siya. Pero kapag nakatalikod na siya, yung mismong mga tao pumalakpak sa kanya ay iisipin na, he's a fool for not using that ring. Ganun daw. And Logan also further claims that just people only do just things or what is considered as ethical because these are what the law mandated. Diba? And we have discussed a while ago that laws were only made to protect people from being done injustice and to keep people from doing evil things to their fellow men. Hence, we could say that, like what Glaucon said, just and unjust people have self-interests as their similarity, and only the laws separate them. Just people fulfill their self-interests by abiding by the law and gaining societal approval. Diba? And unjust people by fulfilling their own interests by doing what they desire to do.
For the last argument naman, is ethics only applicable in societal living? According to the reading, yes. Because ethics is based on the laws which are made by the agreement of the society. It acts as a social contract. And this social contract will only make sense when we live in a society because people are innately self-centered who will only act upon their own self-interest. And without this social contract, we have no other reason to do good things, especially when we are on our own. This idea is also supported by various ethical theories that are related to reasoning and egoism, which would be further discussed in the next part.
Ayan, thank you, Nicolette. Meanwhile, to connect our reading to psychology, we can relate the ring of Gyges to various theories and frameworks. Ito, alam ko na familiar na tayong lahat dito sa social psychology natin, community psych, and developmental psych. So one of the most prominent theories of morality is Kohlberg's moral development theory or his stages of moral development. Di ba nga, sabi ni Sir last time, last Friday in our course, ethics and morality could be used interchangeably with ethics being more formal. So back to Kohlberg's theory, according sa kanya, there are 6 stages with 2 stages falling under 3 levels each. For the pre-conventional level, people with this reasoning are those who only act based on their own self-interest or their desire for rewards and protection from punishment. For example, some people who are considered just only help others to feed their desires to be promoted or to be given rewards. Some people choose not to harm others, not because they are truly just, but because they do not want the retaliation of other people or the punishment of the law. Di ba nga dito, si Kohlberg parang mga famous example dito, yung mga bata, ganyan, di ba na hindi sila gagawa ng bad or gagawa sila ng good, hindi dahil good sila or gusto nilang gumawa ng good, but because they desire yung rewards na ibibigay sa kanila. For example, baka magbigay ng candy yung parent or yung teacher, di ba, for doing something good. O kaya, gumagawa sila ng good kasi takot sila na mapalo, takot sila na mapagalitan. Meanwhile, for the conventional moral reasoning, people only do things based on the mandates of the law, based on our reading and what we can observe in our environment. These are people who are plainly lawful. Ganyan, ethical sila because they aim for societal approval or because that is what is stated by the laws. Diba? As Lopan mentioned, some people only act justly not to lose their reputation in our society but rather gain the approval of those around them. For example, may nabasa akong tweet yan sa Twitter, sabi ng tao, patutsada siya actually kay Marcos eh. Sabi niya na kung hindi lang sana daw mandated by the law na magbayad ng tax, hindi naman siya magbabayad ng tax. So then that means, di ba, na nasa conventional moral reasoning pa lang siya na kaya siya nagbabayad ng tax, kaya siya nagdudo ng good or ng ethical or lawful, eh dahil yun yung sinasabi ng batas, ganyan. Tapos I can also give you sa situation ngayon ng mga teachers dito sa amin sa barangay na they only follow yung memorandum given to them by the Division of Pampanga and their principal ngayong sa magpa-plan sila ng face-to-face setting, ganyan. Kasi even si mama, she doesn't really want to do what the memo says, ganyan. But she still does so because not following the rules is considered insubordination. Ganyan. Lastly, the post-conventional level of Kohlberg's theory states that people who reach this level are those who have their moral standards outside what the law tells us to do. So, a great example would be our activists who go against what the authority states. Diba? Despite being painted in a bad light, they still continue working for the masses. Diba? As Glocon stated, especially dun sa latter part ng reading natin, unlike the perfectly unjust individuals who are being rewarded and believed as good, these people who are deemed and looked as unjust but are truly just are those who are clothed with nothing but justice, diba? And they are not being rewarded. Those who are the best of men but thought as the worst. As for the next part,
ayan. Aside naman doon sa Kohlberg's theory, Rachel has also proposed the concept of psychological and ethical egoism. These two concepts differ on how people perceive things. To be specific, psychological egoism gives the idea that all men are innately selfish and we only do things for our self-interests. Even if people do good things, deep down they are doing it because we think that it will benefit us in the long run or it will make us feel better about ourselves for doing something good. A perfect example of this is giving donations for publicity. Isa pa yung tutulong ka tapos habang tumutulong ka at the back of your mind, iniisip mo na tutulong ako para sa susunod na ako yung mangangailangan. Parang hindi ka na mahirapang humingi ng help sa kanila kasi natulungan mo na sila, parang utang na loob, ganun. On the other hand, ethical egoism naman gives the idea that people only act for their self-interest and are only obliged to act based on their own desires without having the thought of considering what effect it could have on others. Meaning to say, the reason to pursue doing good is the goodness of the thing that we can obtain from doing so. A perfect example of this naman is cutting down massive amount of trees to build a new mall.
Yes. So, ayan naman. To put the lessons from our reading in the context of politics, some people also have their own rings of Gyges. Diba? Yung protection nila as they are able to do unjust things without being punished by the laws. So, perfect example, ayan. Alam naman natin, kilala na natin ito. The Marcoses, diba? For so many years, they have been protected by their own rings of Gyges, the power that comes from their name and their ill-gotten wealth. Diba? These are the people whom we can say as the perfect examples of what Logan described as the complete or perfect injustice, with them being deemed as completely just despite the avalanche of proofs of their atrocities. Di ba nga madami nang hiniwala sa kanila, tumitingin sa kanila na good people sila, they are just people, but the truth is they are not.
Isa pang example ng complete injustice ay yung indirect vote buying. So, when the day of election is near, politicians have their different tactics to get the vote of the masses by legal and or illegal means, one of which is indirect vote buying. Politicians do projects and claim all the credits for doing the project. By doing this, a lot of citizens would remember their act of kindness during the voting period, and they think that they owe them something even if the funds for the project was actually theirs. Galing naman sa taong bayan yung ginamit sa project na yon. This action shows complete injustice. Dito sa Guagua, sa amin, merong bawat household pwede maka-receive ng 3,000 basta voter ka. Tapos yung tawag sa kanya, parang paayuda siya ngayong pandemic. Tapos nakapangalan siya sa isang politician. Hindi naman sinabi na, i-vote nyo kung makakuha kayo. Parang indirectly, parang iisipin ng mga tao dito na ay utang na loob, ganun na binigyan kami ng 3,000. Pero yung totoo naman, project talaga yun nung municipality namin. Pero ngayon, parang nakukuha niya yung loob ng mga tao na hindi naman siya pwedeng sabihin na vote buying talaga. Ayun. So, next. Bukod naman doon sa yung dalawang nabanggit namin na example, parehong complete injustice. Dito naman yung kabaligtaran. So, the death of Socrates shows the opposite of complete injustice, wherein he was sentenced to death and gained a bad reputation for teaching. Wala siyang ibang kasalanan kung hindi yung gusto lang niya mamulat yung mga tao. So he was accused of corrupting the minds of the youth. A few of his students and colleagues has actually offered him some help so he could leave Athens bago siya sentensyahin. Kaya lang, he chose to stay and willingly accept the verdict of the rulers. Because for him, no one is above the laws and he is not an exemption. If their verdict is to let him die, then he is willing to accept it.
Ayan. Diba, we have related our readings sa psychology and sa politics. Then, we also thought now we can relate it to online posting. So, yung trolls and cyberbullying. So, having the protection of anonymity, trolls in our country are being given the free rein in sharing disinformation and malicious contents. And we all know what disinformation is all about, diba? About certain people, such as artists and politicians. Sa Facebook pa lang, ganyan, sa YouTube, even sa TikTok, diba? Ang daming trolls na nagkakalat ng disinformation about certain politicians, about certain celebrities, no? And in our Pol Sci 14 class, we have studied how these troll farms operate. And relating this to our reading, because of the protection from being punished, di ba kasi nga anonymous accounts, fake accounts, di ba? Para may rings of Gyges din sila. No? These people now have the courage to troll others like what Gyges did.
Isa pang example is cyberbullying. Nowadays, people are so invested in social media as a means to connect ourselves to other people around the globe, lalo na ngayong pandemic. However, people do not usually use this technology to do good. In fact, there are a lot of cases of cyberbullying. These cyberbullies gain their confidence to throw hateful remarks because they can hide their identities by creating fake accounts or use websites such as Curious Cat and As.fm. Ito, yung mga site na to, before pa siya ng pandemic, pero sobrang uso niya yung pwede ka magtanong or magsabi ng kahit na anong gusto mong sabihin. Tapos, hindi malalaman nung sinendan mo kung sino yung nag-send. Ayun.
Ayun nga. And actually, susunod ko lang yung sinabi ni Nicolette about cyberbullying. I have been bullied by teens noong high school, ganyan. These teens were using anonymous accounts, fake accounts sa Facebook, ganyan. Tapos, like Gyges, these people also use the power of anonymity. Kasi, di ba, paano ko, how was I able, di ba, to know kung sino ba talaga yung mga yon, di ba? So, like Gyges, these people had the power of anonymity to make you so uncomfortable. Ganyan. Pero that's in the past naman yan. On another note, I am also guilty of being similar to what Lopon said about people only doing and acting good because of the fear of punishment and the desire for societal approval. In relation to that, I know that all of us have both done unjust acts and received injustice from other people, whether small or complicated matters. So how about you? So what experiences similar to our lesson do you want to share? Yan, what are your reflections? You can comment them in this post if you are willing to do so.
So in summary, yung pinaka-point ng reading natin ay many people have plenty of desires that they will never admit to anyone else. But if they will be given the opportunity to do whatever they want and get away from the consequences, they will act differently from the typical action that they would do if someone would see them. No one really acts justly. They are just obliged to act justly to avoid punishments, to avoid being judged, and to avoid losing a good reputation.
And as Local proposed, diba, for us to judge the unjust and just, they need to be separated. So let the unjust man live his life the way that he wants. Sabi nga ni Glocon, being perfectly unjust. And let the just man be perfectly just. And diba sabi nga ni Nicolette kanina, because it is actually easier, it is easy, so easy to say and claim na ako, just ako, diba? It is so easy to claim that one is just. In order raw to know if a person is genuinely just or not, si Glocon nag-propose siya, sabi niya, they need to go through life wherein they will only be clothed with nothing but justice and be deemed unjust by others. So in conclusion, allow us to share a quote from the reading, and I quote, when both have reached the uttermost extreme, the one of justice and the other of injustice, let judgment be given, which of them is the happier of the two. And we are leaving you these questions to think about and to ponder. Which do you prefer? Would you choose to be just and live life being deemed unjust? Or would you rather live life with injustice while being regarded as just? Thank you so much for listening.
Always take care and may we be able to live life filled with joy.
Bye!